Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Hall Zone here on SHU TV. My name is Manuel Pereria, and I get the honor and the privilege to be here with Dr. Daniel Ladik, formerly known as Professor Dano, correct?
Dr. Dano.
Dr. Dano, I apologize.
It's a good brand, though.
That is a good brand.
It's a good brand.
That is great. So if you could just introduce yourself and how long you've been here at Seton Hall and what you're up to here.
I started at Seton Hall in the fall of 2010 as an assistant professor of marketing. I'm now tenured, and since 2020, I've been running the Seton Hall Sports Poll as well. And 2 years ago, I became the chair of the marketing department.
So that sports poll, one of the most famous sports polls, especially among universities, or the only one amongst universities.
There
correct?
are many polls amongst universities in the United States. They're primarily politics polls or some consumer behavior or sociology kinds of polls. We're the only continuous running sports poll in the country.
And how much have you seen it grown since you got here and since you took over in 2020?
It's been substantial growth. And in my opinion, some of the most exciting growth is amongst the students that currently work in the poll. In 2020, which we were in that post-pandemic bubble, so in 2020, 2021, and 2022, I had no students working in the poll.
Wow.
And then 1 year I had 2, then I had 4, last year I had 12, and this year we have 18 students doing social media, media creation, graphic design. We have writers that we call scribes, and we also have analytics students.
And this has been an excellent year for the sports poll. And one of the great things, events that you guys have been able to host were right here with Burke Magnus when he came to the school. How do you go about setting up those type of things and getting those connections with big time people in the field?
Well, first I want to talk about the event in terms of why we wanted to do the event. And although we do amazing stuff here in the poll, one of the things that we want to make sure we do is have impact across campus. This was an event that was open to any student, regardless of major, undergrad, grad. We had at least 160 students swipe through. I know we planted over 180 chairs. There were about 1.5 to 2 dozen faculty members there. But we also had at least a dozen or 2 people standing in the back. We comfortably like to say that there was about 200 people at this event. And that's why we wanted to do it. We wanted to have an event to the level of Burke on campus for students, faculty, to interact here, to listen. It's about impact on campus.
So obviously you guys go very deep into the numbers side and the marketing side, but now, as you mentioned earlier, investing more in the media side. You guys started a podcast not too long ago, right? So if you want to promote that and just tell people what they can find there.
Episode 3 was Burke.
Yeah.
We made sure we got a nice little 7 to 10 minute conversation while he was on campus. I think you guys had a nice conversation with him as well. Because when you have someone at this level on campus, you want to see how many people we can expose him or her to. A couple years ago, we had Billie Jean King on campus, and we did the same thing, and we tried to get as much exposure as we possibly could. You know, just so everybody knows who Burke is, if you watch ESPN, every person you see on the camera, he hired. Every one of them. All of them.
Yeah.
He's the head of talent. He's the head of content. He's in charge of all of that. And how did we get this incredible connection? Well, we're very fortunate to have another professor as a faculty mentor here in the Seton Hall Sports Poll, Professor Len DeLuca. And Professor Len DeLuca has a personal relationship with Burke Magnus, and he actually hired him way back when Burke had his first internship position coming out of grad school.
Wow. So what are some of the other specific experiences that students in the sports poll are gaining this year? And how can students get involved that aren't involved this year? How can they get involved in the future?
The best way to get involved with the Seton Hall Sports Poll is to join the SMAC, S-M-A-C, Sports Management Analytics Club. We tend to hire a lot of our pollsters, our poll workers, out of that club because they're the most familiar with us. Professor DeLuca is the faculty advisor for SMAC. We do a lot of joint events with SMAC. They have their meetings actually in the lab right here, this room in Jubilee Hall. We also have students outside of SMAC and outside of Stillman. I would say almost 50% of the students that are working in the poll are not Stillman students.
Wow.
They're in A&S because I need writers and I need people with media skills. And some of that's probably not coming from Stillman students. So some of the sports media students are here in the poll. And I tend to work with like a BJ Schechter, and he helps us like, hey, you got any recommendations for me? And we go from there and we do interviews. And then just like every other position that's on campus, it's on the Seton Hall HR website. We tend to hire right before each semester. So the fall is usually the biggest batch, and then the spring is a smaller one, but I'll probably open up the 2 positions again in January, because I have 11 seniors out of the 18. I need to have some youngins in the poll because we like to hit the ground running in September, and it's great when we have like half dozen to a dozen people that already had experience working in the poll.
So should definitely be advising students who are interested to look out January,
January.
Right?
It's the week we come back and classes start.
Awesome. So what's the vision going forward with the sports poll? How much do you see it growing in the near future, maybe perhaps the next few years?
Well, one of the things that Professor DeLuca and I are trying to do is develop partnerships with sports media entities. Like this amazing experience we just had with ESPN, these were conversations that Professor DeLuca and I had with ESPN starting in July, because we wanted this year to be an impactful year. We had 2 incredible placements on ESPN, including being on the main page. Like if you went for a 24-hour period, if you went to ESPN.com, one of the top 10 stories on the right-hand column, we were one. We had a little icon there with a movie camera, top movie sports poll, top movie, and we were just like, it was fantastic. I took a screenshot. Awesome. I emailed that to a bunch of people. But those relationships took months and dozens of emails and multiple Zoom calls. And our next goal is to say, okay, who else can we bring into the fold? ESPN's amazing. How about Sports Business Journal? How about Sportico? How about Bloomsburg's Business of Sport? And the more we can get the word out about the interesting data that we collect on sports and ethics, sports and business, and sports and culture, the more I can get students involved in helping. Because just like WSOU, this is a student-run center. It is a lab, and the students write all the work. I'm staring at one of the students over here who wrote the majority of the article on that was that ESPN sports movie poll. I have someone that did the graphics sitting right next to me that did all the graphics for the sports movie. I can go through the room and see, okay, who helped with social posts? Who helped with doing analytics, collecting the data? Who helped write the questions? Professor DeLuca and I are the advisors. We're kind of, what would we call ourselves? The
overseers.
Overseers, that sounds kind of crazy, but mentors, guides, pedagogues, coaches, advisors.
Capo regimes.
Professor Luca.
That's a real word. I don't got that one in my vocabulary.
So obviously, sky seems to be the limit. That might be an understatement for this, with the amount of experiences students are gaining here. Anything coming up soon that you want to promote before we end off?
Well, we have podcast number 3 that just dropped. The podcast is called Hall or Nothing, the official podcast of the Seton Hall Sports Poll. The students did name the podcast. I did not name the podcast. The students are featured both on the front end and the back end of the podcast, and we rotate which students in the poll are doing the front end reads and the back end reads. We will be doing another event in the spring to the level of this. I don't think the second one will be ESPN, where Professor DeLuca and I are discussing who's going to be our next big event, but we're forecasting one for sometime in April after Easter. That'll give us enough time to plan.
Awesome. So thank you so much, Dr. Ladik.
Appreciate it.
For coming on. My name is Manny Pereira. Thank you for watching Hall Zone here on SHU TV. And remember, if you're interested in the sports poll, January, you could look out for an email. Would you be the one sending the email?
It's not an email. It'll be on the Seton
HR?
Hall
Okay.
HR website. And if you want to come up into Jubilee Hall, we're up on the 5th floor. The lab is 541, and my office, which is connected to the lab, is 542.
So mark it down, write it down. We'll see you soon. Stay tuned for all SHU TV content coming up. Thank you, guys.